Well, to debate this, I'm joined now by Ewol Allo. He's a human rights expert and law lecturer at Kiel University. He also nominated Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for the prize. In Norway's capital, we're joined by Henrik Urdal. He's the director of the Peace Research Institute Oslo. And from Charlottesville in the U.S. state of Virginia is David Swanson. He's the director of World Beyond War, a movement aiming to end global conflict. Good to have you all on the program. Ewol Allo, let's start with you. I know you support Abiy Ahmed. I know you nominated him. In the context of everybody else who was supposedly in the running, do you think that he was overwhelmingly the most deserving?
I think so. I think this is somebody who came out of nowhere, essentially, transformed the Ethiopian political landscape, a very, a country with a very long history, very fractious, very volatile political environment. He changed Ethiopia for the better. He also plays such a decisive role in terms of transforming the landscape in the Horn of Africa, particularly in terms of advancing the agenda of peace. So certainly, yes, he is the most deserving candidate.
Henrik Urdal, does the man deserve the medal?
Well, absolutely. I think this was a very well-received prize all over the world, basically, both in Ethiopia and regionally and globally as well. I think he has been clearly one of the front runners this year. The only question that has been raised is whether it's still too early. But I think the Nobel Committee made a very bold move to give him the prize now, which of course also means that there is a great expectation that he is meeting all the expectations that he has created.
David Swanson, is it hard to argue with all the reasons given for Abiy Ahmed getting the prize?
Well, he's certainly more deserving than virtually any other president, the president of the United States or Turkey or anywhere else. It's not as good a prize as ICANN was 2 years ago, the campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. The prize was set up to fund peace activism for the abolition of war. I don't know that he needs that funding, but as a president, a prime minister who's come in and conceded territory at risk to himself, has survived an assassination attempt, has made peace something bold and courageous rather than war, he is certainly a far better choice than we might have seen. Yeah,
well, with the Nobel Peace Prize, controversy is rarely far away. And when you look at some of the previous winners, it's easy to understand why. Barack Obama had only been the US president for 9 months when he picked up the prestigious accolade. And this year's Literature Prize went to Austrian author Peter Handke, an apologist for accused war criminal Slobodan Milosevic. So is this what was originally envisaged when the award was first set up a century ago? Adam Pletz takes a look. Gentlemen, I'll come back to you in a second.
The Nobel Peace Prize is perhaps the world's most prestigious award. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, and the Dalai Lama have all been recipients. Since 1901, 106 individuals have become Nobel laureates, only 17 of whom have been women. 24 organizations have also been bestowed the honor, among them Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, the UN, and the EU. But with 3 wins, the International Committee of the Red Cross has been recognized more often than any other organization. Swedish industrialist Alfred Nobel bequeathed his vast fortune to set up the Nobel Prizes, which were first awarded in 1901. If it's ironic that Nobel became rich through the invention of dynamite and weapons sales, then it's perhaps fitting that the prize that bears his name has had its fair share of controversy. When US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger won in 1973, the New York Times suggested he was the Nobel War Laureate. Other awards have been premature at best. Yasser Arafat, Yitzhak Rabin, and Shimon Peres never saw a settlement to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Aung San Suu Kyi's failure to condemn the repression of the Rohingya people prompted calls for her prize to be revoked. But the Nobel Committee says a prize is for past achievements and is held for life. Barack Obama was awarded the 2009 prize after only 9 months in office and little to show for it.
To be honest, I do not feel that I deserve to be in the company of so many of the transformative figures who've been honored by this prize.
But many believe the Nobel Committee's biggest mistake was not an award made in error, but rather one that was never bestowed. Despite being nominated 5 times before his death in 1948, Mahatma Gandhi never received the Peace Prize. Will 2019's award to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed stand the test of time, or was it too early to judge the reconciliation he orchestrated between his country and Eritrea? Adam Pletz, The Newsmakers.
Let's go back to our panel now. Henrik Urdal, lots of questions about it. Is this maybe just a nice story we tell ourselves and we award these medals and we talk about peace? And yes, there are other facets to the Nobel Prize for literature and different scientific endeavors and so on. But does it really make a difference, especially when it comes to the Peace Prize? Because the track record doesn't seem to suggest that.
Well, I think I don't quite entirely agree with that. I think there are some cases where the prize has definitely been instrumental in making a difference in processes, and I think this year's prize is going to be measured along the same lines. I think the prize in 2016 to Santos really made it possible for Santos to push ahead with the peace agreement with FARC in Colombia. And I think it probably meant a difference in terms of making sure that process didn't derail. Whether this prize is going to stand the time as well as some of the other prizes is still unclear. I think it's quite clear that Abiy Ahmed needs to deliver on internal developments. He needs to deliver on democratization. He needs to deliver on developments in the region. And there's a lot of pressure on him, but this prize also means that he will get the international support for these processes. And I think that it is possible that he can actually deliver on these promises.
Okay, fair enough. But then again, while it might be great for Juan Manuel Santos' CV to have the Nobel Peace Prize, the situation on the ground right now in Colombia suggests that that peace could unravel, and his successor is a president who doesn't like the FARC very much and doesn't like the peace deal, right? So again, it's almost as if to say, well, Santos did his best, but will it actually be sustainable? We don't know. Do you accept that, Henrik?
No, absolutely. I do accept that. And it's, of course, difficult to know exactly what the situation in Colombia would have been without the peace prize. Of course, if we had no peace agreement at all, it probably would not have been any better than today. So it's always difficult to sort of second guess what the development would have been in the absence of things like this. But I do hope that this is a prize that can make a difference. But of course, if you're going to give the prize only for past achievements, it becomes a sort of uncontroversial and perhaps toothless prize in the end.
Okay, and I guess David Swanson, the most extreme example of the aspirational element of the Peace Prize was when it was given to Barack Obama when he hadn't done anything yet, right?
You would think so, yes. But then remember that Dr. Martin Luther King, who you began your piece with as the quintessential prize winner, he turned against the war on Vietnam after having received the prize. And I think the difference there is that he was not a politician. He was an activist. When they gave the prize to Mayreed Maguire, she began to spend year after year after year working nonstop with that prestige and that money toward peace and disarmament and abolishing war. So give it to an activist who's done great work in the past year, and maybe they will do great work for many decades to come.
Good points. Awal Allo, peace with Eritrea, the release of political prisoners. Medemer, I hope my pronunciation is correct. It was in your letter to the committee. It's also something that is spoken of very fondly in Ethiopia, the kind of overriding philosophy and of sort of inclusiveness that Abiy Ahmed has infused in his leadership. It reminds me of the philosophy of Ubuntu in South Africa. He's done all of these things, but we saw a big test very recently when there was a possible coup attempt, a possible assassination attempt. It shows that a lot of people in Ethiopia are not happy with what he's doing. Tell me how big of a test he has ahead of him now that he's made these reforms, he's made peace, and he's got the Nobel Prize, but is he really in the clear?
I think there are two really distinct issues here. One is Ethiopia itself and the transitional process that he is leading in Ethiopia. And I think it's important to understand just how complex the Ethiopian state is. It is an empire that consists of something in the area of 80 different nations, nationalities, and people held together by force, all of whom have very different claims, very different experiences, and very different visions of the future. In order for Abiy Ahmed or any single individual to bring together all those different views and different perspectives in a context of democratization where everybody is now allowed to say whatever they want and make whatever claims they wish, is going to be very difficult. And I think the challenges that Ethiopia is going through, particularly in terms of maintaining law and order, a huge number of people that are displaced, although they are now resettled again, that is very much, I think, part of the broader package of reforms and transition that also resulted in some unexpected outcomes. But I think on the question of peace and the commitment of the Prime Minister to peace, I think he has a very solid record when it comes to that. The fact that he took some serious personal risks in terms of changing the political landscape in Ethiopia, opening up the political process, pardoning political prisoners and allowing those who were designated as terrorist organizations to come back and participate in democratic politics. Those are all risks that he took for peace. But most importantly, I think what he is doing at the regional level in terms of kind of changing the image of the Horn of Africa, which is seen as kind of highly volatile region. So when he was appointed as a prime minister, in his inaugural speech, the first, and I think one of the most important foreign policy statements he made was unconditionally accepting the Algiers Peace Agreement and the decision of the Boundary Commission, which actually gave Ethiopian territory, or at least what was until then Ethiopian territory, to Eritrea. That was a huge compromise as an Ethiopian leader, and he did that for peace at great personal risk to him when there were some very significant and powerful elements within the Ethiopian government who were opposed to that at that point. I think beyond Eritrea, what he has done in terms of bringing various actors in the region together, so the tension between Eritrea and Djibouti, Eritrea and Somalia, Somalia and Kenya, in South Sudan, most recently the deal between the Force of Freedom and Change and the military junta in Sudan. I think that tells you that this is somebody that is absolutely committed to agenda of peace, right, and also determined to push it through even when it means some personal risks to him.
And he's had immaculate credentials. I wonder, Henrik, do they think politically in the committee? So, for example, in a time when perhaps the committee is thinking a top priority is extremism in a place like Pakistan and Afghanistan, we give it to someone brave like Malala. At a time when we want to, North Korea is threatening nuclear weapons, we give it to the disarmament committee, those scientists and so on. Are they thinking that the lesson from Abiy Ahmed is that maybe the Israelis and Palestinians, maybe the Indians and Pakistanis and others can learn something from this man, and that's the top priority? Do they think politically and strategically like that?
No, absolutely. The committee is certainly attuned to these issues, and I think what the committee is trying to say here also more broadly is to put the past behind you and move on and make sure that you're taking the first step and being willing to risk something in order to create peace, and that's a very strong and powerful message that they're sending in this case.
And with that in mind, David Swanson, realistically speaking, if you were on opposite sides of a conflict elsewhere in the world and you see someone like Abiy Ahmed get the Peace Prize, do you think, maybe I want some of that, maybe I'll extend the olive branch to my enemy?
Well, one certainly hopes so, and I certainly hope that a message reaches Western governments, where that prize to ICANN 2 years ago was not just a message to North Korea. It was for a group that was working against the desires of Western governments, which is very unusual for the Nobel Peace Prize. And here, I would love the message to be received in Washington and other Western capitals. Stop selling weapons to countries waging wars in the name of democracy and start giving actual humanitarian aid with no strings attached to places that are actually acting out democratically and for peace. I would much rather see U.S. dollars and European dollars going to a place like Ethiopia for the cause of peace and democracy, rather than more and more weapons for the rest of that region and the Middle East, in the name of democracy, which nobody takes seriously.
Okay, very finally, Awal Alo, let's sort of put aside the analytical hat for a moment. How proud are you?
I'm very, very proud as an Ethiopian and also as an African. And I think in order for an African statesman, a very young, dynamic individual, to come out of nowhere, change the political fortune in his country, and also change the image of a region. And I think that is a very proud moment for us as Ethiopians, but also as Africans. As you know, while people within their own corner, within their own specific regions and towns, they could have differences on all sorts of little details and policy issues. But I think there is also a bigger picture here in terms of how these recognitions are awarded to people in different parts of the world. This used to be a highly Eurocentric award. I think the fact that it is progressively moving towards also recognizing other people in other cultures, I think that is a very important move on the part of the committee. I, as an Ethiopian, feel very proud and happy.
Right. And Hendrik Oordal, to those naysayers and cynics and critics, I'm one of them, right, who feel that maybe the prize is not fully fit for purpose because a lot of our idols who have received the prize in the past have broken our hearts, have let us down. There's still hope because of what?
Well, there's always a risk involved in giving the prize to a state leader, but Abiy Ahmed has been installing a lot of enthusiasm, not only in its own country, but in the whole region. You see that also in the reactions from neighboring prime ministers and state leaders, both in Kenya and in Somalia. So there is strong belief in the agenda that Abiy Ahmed is representing, and if he's able to pull it off, it can have huge implications, huge positive implications for the whole of East Africa. So this is a reason for rejoice.
Okay, well, it was a prize created by the inventor of dynamite, as was mentioned by Adam Pletz, perhaps to do some conscience cleansing, if you like. But nevertheless, here we are, it's 2019, and we're still debating the values and the merits, and it's still, if you looked at Abiy Ahmed's response as well from his office, a lot of pride and a lot of dignity in that response, very gracious in receiving it. Let's hope that Ethiopia moves on to even better things. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Hendrik Oordal, Ewol Allo, and David Swanson, thanks for joining us here on the Newsmakers.